Welcome to the Peach Crisp Show. I'm Peach.
I'm not crisp.
And we're
Peach Crisp.
Peach Crisp. So, little warning for a couple videos to come out. Daniel has left to DC on an internship, so he won't be here. But he did see Across the Spider-Verse, which is what we're talking about today. So we're gonna get him to send his scores in, so that way y'all aren't left in the dark on what he thought about this movie. Y'all know the criteria. Starting with the plot. This was a part 1 movie, which did kind of hurt the plot just a teensy little bit for me. I knew it wasn't going to end satisfyingly, but we'll get to that later in the finale. But a lot of the stuff in this one wasn't just too important. Everything that happened was technically important for the most part, but you can tell that all of the super awesome plot heavy stuff is gonna be in the second one, which I'm fine with.
Yeah.
Because that's how these part 1, part 2 movies work. So I'm perfectly fine with that. The only big thing that kind of took off the plot for me was that they gave both Gwen and Miles fake love interests, and I really just hated seeing that. It just, I don't know, it rubbed me the wrong way. My favorite thing about Into the Spider-Verse, or one of my favorite things, was the interactions that Miles has with the other Spider people. I think that they all had really cute relationships, and I think that the best one was Gwen and Miles. And in this one, they're just super distant, and even in the one real conversation they have of it involves her making jokes about how she stays over at Hobie's place, and it's just I don't know, it's I don't like that. And then there's also one for Miles too, but I don't know, it didn't super hurt the movie or anything. It was just I didn't like seeing it. It didn't make me happy, and it was the one thing in the movie that didn't make me happy. So yeah. I guess kind of with that, I wish Spider-Man would have had a scene with Peter B. Parker that didn't end with him getting mad at Peter B. Parker. Because the one time they got to talk alone, it ended with him being upset. And I was like, dang, I loved watching them in the last one. I don't get to see that. But, oh well. It'll set up for a great second movie, I think. So I gave it a 24 out of 25.
Yeah. I agree with you for the most part. The fake relationship thing or fake love interest didn't really bother me. I mean, Spider-Man's always going to have multiple love interests. It's just part of his character. But there were a few little things with the plot that we've talked about in detail that I won't keep on here talking about, because there is a lot in this movie, so you could go on for hours and hours talking about it. But so I did deduct a point from it, but so it's a 24 out of 25. But for me, as far as the Gwen and Peter conversations, I think it just sets up that there'd be some even better ones.
I think so.
In the second
one. Which is why I didn't take off.
Yeah, for the most part, the characters were awesome. Miles is just an incredible character. Gwen, who wasn't one of my favorites from Into the Spider-Verse, but might have been my favorite in this movie. Just seeing her backstory was crazy cool and fun, and not fun. It really wasn't fun. I don't think fun was the right adjective, but it was intense.
Were fun parts.
It was intense and it was cool. So my love for Gwen really skyrocketed after this movie. I loved Spot. I thought Spot was sick. 2099, incredible. Yeah, the only character I had a problem with was the VR Spider-Man. Because why? There's VR Spider-Man. Why would there be someone sitting in a chair controlling an avatar who is Spider-Man? That just kind of
she just wasn't necessary.
That means that spider person didn't get bit by a spider because they just gave the avatar those powers, and it's just someone sitting in a chair. What's the point?
If she was even Spider-Man in her universe, or if she was literally just sitting in a chair and was playing a character that has the Spider-Man's powers. They didn't explain it.
Not necessarily that the character was horrible. If it would have just been a normal Spider-Woman, like that was that
literally
character.
those scenes with a normal Spider-Woman would have fixed her character.
Yeah, literally would have fixed her character.
Like, don't change the dialogue.
Yeah.
Just don't
Everything
make her
else,
VR.
just don't make her VR. The VR thing was stupid to me, so I had a real big problem with that character. And another problem that I had was with the Scarlet Spider, or Ben Reilly. At first, I thought it was funny because Ben Reilly is like has one of like the darkest, like tragic backstories with Spider-Man. And so like when they first showed him, he was like leaned up against the pole, like, oh, I'm just tragically thinking about my past. I was like, that's really funny. And then they just played into it way too much, like with the, I don't even bother trying to escape. I've got you like wrapped in my bicycle, or whatever. Like I was like, oh, come on guys, don't ruin it. You had a funny joke. But so those were my problems with the characters. I gave it a 14 out of 15 because while those characters weren't the best, every other character just.
For me, I kind of fully agree on the VR Spider-Woman. Like, for the most part, if they had kept her dialogue the same and just made her a person, I would have been fine with it. But she was one of the two characters that I had an issue with because she was one of the fake love interests for Miles. Like, Miles has spent all this time just thinking about Gwen. Like, he draws her in his notebook all the time and all this, and like he clearly misses her. And then after like one or two conversations with her, he meets this fake Spider-Woman, and
Who's
then
an avatar.
who's literally an avatar. And when he sees her, he goes, "My name's Spider-Man." It's like,
Yeah, we all are.
yeah, we all
That
are.
was a bad line. That was
Oh
a bad
man, I was so upset in that moment. I was like, I don't want to see him, who's like head over heels for Gwen, start like flirting with another character. It rubs me the wrong way so bad. I don't like it at all. So I didn't like that. But besides that, her character was fine. It was just, I don't get the VR thing. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. It makes me mad. That's.
I also when like I can't. I don't know. There's one part where she helps Miles and she doesn't really have a reason to.
She just does.
Like, she, like all the other Spider people, should really be trying to stop him in that moment. She's just like, go. The only character that it makes sense for to help Miles is Hobie, and I thought it made sense because he did. That made sense, but hers it didn't make any sense. But Hobie was the other character I had a problem with because he was the fake love interest for Gwen. I didn't like the references like, oh, she stays over at his place. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. But I didn't dislike either of the characters really, so I could take off like a point for each or something. But like on the positive side, 2099, incredible. Gwen is my favorite character in this movie. I loved her in this movie. I love Miles, such a good protagonist. Spider-Man India, I loved him.
Super cool.
He was so cool. He has like some awesome scenes in this movie and good comic relief too. I loved Miles' dad and mom in this one. They were a lot more fleshed out in this movie, I think. I love them. And I was okay with Spot. I think he was a pretty decent villain.
I love Spot.
So
Them playing into like, because in the comic books he would literally be like a villain of the week. He was a nobody villain for
that is
Spider-Man.
what they call him in this movie.
Like, and just seeing like him being the villain of the week and being upset about it, I think that's just a cool touch.
I gave it a 14 out of 15. And then enjoyment. I really, really loved this movie. I enjoyed it pretty much the whole time. There was, like I mentioned, in plot and in characters, I didn't like that at all. That was definitely my biggest complaint. I don't know. I can't really explain it. It just didn't make me happy. It made me upset. So there's that. But then knowing that this was a two-parter movie, when like the last 20 minutes or so, I was just getting like, can we just end the movie already? I know no matter what, there's not going to be a satisfying conclusion. So just get to whatever big reveal you want to do that sets up the sequel. I was just getting a little impatient, but like, I mean, I guess that's my own fault. I don't know. It was like, I knew it wasn't ending satisfyingly, so just end. But it doesn't take off too much. The only other thing was I wish that there was more scenes with Spider-Man getting to have actual conversations with like Gwen and Peter B. Parker, because those were my favorite parts of the first movie. But besides that, I enjoyed every second of it. There was a lot of fan service that kind of even like bumped my score a little more because my brain was like, oh my gosh, Spider-Man stuff. So 23 out of 25.
There wasn't a single moment of this movie that I didn't enjoy. I mean, I was even at like the VR girl and the times where they overused Scarlet Spider. Like, it wasn't enough for me to be like, for even maybe like a split second, I was like, but then something else would happen right after that where I'm like, you know. So, I love this movie so much. I was walking out the theater in almost tears of happiness. I was shaking. I literally, the first words that came out of my mouth, I think when I talked to you guys, was I'm so happy. Like, I enjoy this movie so much. I don't see a possible like way, and I've been trying to think of like ways I can deduct points from it, and I can't think of one. 25 out of 25. Flawless. Gwen's world specifically, incredible. Just the way it intertwined with the music was 5 out of 5. Perfect.
Is that
Perfect.
all?
That's all I'll say.
I agree. I got more to say though. If you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So I'm glad you mentioned Gwen's world. At the beginning of the movie, it starts, the first like 15 or 20 minutes or so is in Gwen's perspective, and I really loved it. I thought for a second that the animation looked just okay because the color was weird. Like the color shading and coloration was a little bit off, it felt like. And I was like, huh, I hope the whole movie doesn't look like this because this is a bit weird. But it didn't. But when it like got farther into Gwen's stuff and like I got to appreciate some of the scenes in her world, oh my gosh, I loved it so much. Like there's one part where she's talking to her dad, and while she's talking to him, it's a pretty like depressing talk. Like the color starts draining out of the room and it's becoming like just one shade except for her and her dad, and they're also kind of draining color too, but like, and then she gets up and hugs him at one point, and then like the color just like splashes back in, and so I'm like, oh man, it was so good. Oh, I love that scene so much. One of my favorite scenes in the movie. It was so good. If I wanted to like go through this movie and find problems with it, I would be like such a loser. I would be nitpicking to death to try to find a reason to deduct a point on this. I will say, I thought the first movie, Into the Spider-Verse, had the best animation for like an animated movie for a long time. And then Puss in Boots: The Last Wish came out and was a little bit better. No, it was a decent bit better, honestly. That movie is incredible. And then this movie came out, and I'm having a little bit of a toss-up between which is better because I think both of them are like perfect.
Yeah. So
I don't know which is better. I had to put that out there. But perfect animation, 5 out of 5. Incredible. I don't have like much of anything to say about this, but there is one scene, probably my favorite scene in the movie. You see it in the trailers when Gwen and Miles are talking and they're sitting upside down. Holy mess, that is such a cool shot.
The cinematography in that scene is so good. And when they go to the wide shot and you see the city like normal and they're upside down, and they go like back to them and then back to another wide shot and they're normal and everything else is upside down. It's so cool.
Miles and Gwen get to have real conversations. So, I love that scene so much.
It's a great scene.
Besides that, like I don't know, I can't just sit here and pull up other scenes. The cinematography was perfect. I don't think there's many times they could have done something better.
And there was even a part I felt like I was watching the Lego movie, and it was probably
5 out of 5.
Probably because of cinematography too. I feel like I was watching the Lego movie because of that. They knew what they were doing with like the different worlds, cinematography wise.
What do you give it?
5.
Okay.
I mean, Meek Moore.
Oh, he did so good.
Haley Steinfeld.
Oh my gosh, he did so good.
But the person who stole the show for me was Oscar Isaac.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I was genuinely scared. Like he did such a good job. It's my favorite Oscar Isaac performance, and I didn't even see his beautiful face. Like
real.
Like, you know,
29.9 did kind of look like him though.
A little bit, yeah. You know, we have, you know, Moon Knight and Doom and Star Wars, but like, this is his best performance in my opinion.
I think so.
It's incredible. He is so good.
So good. As I just mentioned, I think everybody did an incredible job. The only thing that like could have possibly taken a point down was Spider-Punk, Daniel Kaluuya. I think that's what you say. But like, I think his voice was like super British, and so some of what he said, it might have just been in the theater, was like hard to understand. But I think that's what they were kind of going for, so I was fine with it, and I think he did like a good job. Like, he did great. He always does. Honestly, he's a great actor. But so I can't take a point off of that. He did too good.
Yeah.
And I think they did what they set out to do with him. So 5 out of 5. I was really expecting going into this movie to give it a 10 because it's a Spider-Man movie, and the first one is in my like top 5, 100% my top 10, probably my top 5 movies. So, I was expecting a 10 because I gave the first one a 10. So I was expecting it, but then Spider-Punk and the VR Spider-Woman kind of like, because of the fake love interest stuff, I just didn't care about them, and I wanted to see them less because I knew that they might get brought up again, and I didn't like that. But that was about that for attachment. Like, I grew more attached to like Gwen especially, and I already really liked her. She was one of my favorites in the first movie. Like, her backstory is just so good, and I'm so glad we got to see more of it. Like, I'm glad that she got to play a little bit of a protagonist role in the first part of the movie. I love Miles. I'm scared for him and his family. I love him so much. 9 out of 10. You?
It's hard for me in any type of medium to not get attached to Spider-Man. Like, video game wise, the only video game that's made me cry is the Spider-Man game. TV shows, comic books, like, just making me more, like, I was already super attached to Miles after the first one. I was super attached to Peter B. Parker after the first one. Like, I wanted him and MJ to have everything worked out, and and then you get to see that, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is great. Like, they have a baby together, and you get to see their like marriage life a little bit, and it's cool. And then, like, just to throw on top of that, they just like all of a sudden, I want Gwen to just be okay. Like, I want her and her dad to fix things, and it's like, oh my goodness, like, how much more attached can you give me? If there was an 11 on the scale, I'd go 11, but I can't. But I was super attached.
I wonder what he's going to give it.
I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 because, wow, the finale, I think, in terms of doing its job, did a perfect job of setting up for the next movie. In my opinion, I think it did what it needed to do to get us to the next movie. My one concern with it, or no, I guess not concern, but like negative about it, is that it was predictable. Like, we all knew what was about to happen when it happened. Like, and if you didn't, then I guess you were in for a rude awakening or a very confusing time if you hadn't been paying attention to the movie. But it was predictable. But it's not going to be predictable on how they fix it. I wasn't ready for the movie to end. If the part 2 would have been right after that, I could have sat there for another 2.5 hours and watched it without a problem. So I just took 1 point away and gave it a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I fully agree with that whole sitting and watching the second part. When I said I was ready for it to end, it was because I knew the second part wasn't out yet. It was predictable, but I do think I'm excited for the sequel, not because of how it was set up, but because the movie itself was so good, and I want to see like everything come together for the characters, because I think like the big reveal at the end just wasn't big enough. It wasn't crazy. It wasn't shocking to me. I don't think it was like, I don't know.
I think it's a pretty big reveal. It's just that we saw it.
It was a big reveal, and I saw it coming.
You could see it coming. I mean, if it's not like Infinity War when Thanos killed everybody.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like that, but it was
like a big reveal. It just wasn't like super big, and I did see it coming, and it doesn't seem like it should be a hard problem to fix in terms of Miles' like current situation, not the overall goal of Miles, like everything, just his current situation. Getting him out of that should be really easy.
It should be.
So yeah, I don't want to spoil much.
Yeah.
Anything really. Go watch the movie.
It's great.
So with that, I still like the finale overall. I gave it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah. So
Which
what's your
brings
total
my
score?
score to a 93 out of 100.
My score sits at a 97 out of 100.
Which will include Daniel's score, which would give us an average score of
94.67.
I just want to say 2023 has just been incredible.
incredible
So,
year. I
have, like,
9
3
movies I've
movies
seen,
in the 90s, I think.
I have 5 movies in the 90s.
Wow.
If you include the Demon Slayer movie,
I
not
have-
including the Demon Slayer movie, I have 4. I don't think it's fair.
I have one like 88, and then the rest and then 3 others in the 90s, and we still have Oppenheimer.
That's all for now. Let us know what you thought about the movie. If there's anything you disagree with us on, just let us know. Hate on us. Let us know.
Like, comment, subscribe, and put your own scores in the Peach Crisp
Yeah.
thingy, and tell us
Throw it
what you
in.
got.
See what you got.
What you got.
But that's all. I've been Peach,
I've been Caleb.
and we're
Peach Crisp.
Peach Chris. I thought you were gonna say Peach Caleb, but yeah,
We're
Peach Chris.
Peach Caleb.
We're Peach Caleb.